I'll rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Barb.
Okay, Wonderjum,
Here.
Clyde,
Here.
Steffes,
Here.
Gardine,
Present.
Palmer here, DeHaan.
Here.
Okay. Highboy is absent today. So,
All
got a
right.
quorum still.
Please note, as a courtesy to the members of the audience and the Board of Education, please silence your cell phone. Public will only be able to speak during public comment if signed up. All right. Approval of agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Is that where you want?
That's okay, don't worry. I was just gonna make a note, in your packet, you have an action agenda under consent for personnel hires.
Oh, it wasn't
It
on
is-
this.
Right, it's in your packet, but it's not on the agenda, so it should read to be personnel hires.
All right. Is there anything I need to do with that, Bob?
We could revote if you wanted to, but we don't need to.
All right.
It was noted within the.
That
All right.
was the approval for the agenda, not consent.
So the next topic is consent action agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Next topic is reports and discussion, so we'll turn it over to Roger.
Sure. Very excited to have West Elementary with us here this evening. And Mr. John Wondergem and some awesome kids are here to tell us about the great things happening at West.
You want to? It's up to you. All right.
All right. Am I speaking good there in the microphone? Perfect. All right. Hi, everybody. Really nice to see you all tonight. So again, my name is John Wondergem, principal at West Elementary, very proud principal at West Elementary. We have some awesome kids here tonight wearing their house shirts. I think many of you are familiar with our house system. But we're here tonight to present on some of the really cool things that we've done with our house system this year to continue to make West a really awesome place. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves before we start? You guys just want to say your names? Go ahead, honey. Why don't you say your name and what grade you're in?
I'm Kimmy and I'm in third grade. Ethan, I'm in fourth grade. Ethan in fifth grade. Ethan in first grade. Isaac in second grade.
Yeah. So we got some really awesome kids here. And yeah, so we're just going to talk about some of the things that we've done with our house system this year, and then we'll have some of our kids share about some of those things as well. Perfect. So for those that don't already know, our house system at West is something that we're incredibly proud of, that we would consider that our school-wide PBIS program. It started, I don't know the exact year, but a few years ago, Principal Mulder, Brian Mulder, and Stacy Vile had really championed that within our building as a way to include all of our kids and staff members and really all of our community members. And it's something that we're still rolling with today and very proud of. And you'll also know too that Brian and Stacy are continuing that at the 5-6 building. So it's super cool to partner with them and to continue to pick up some of the things that they left off there at West. But as an overview, all of our kids and all of our staff members, they're sorted into one of 6 houses at our building. So kindergartners through 6th graders are assigned to one of 6 houses. All of them are named after a type of bulldog, of course connected to our Grandville Bulldogs. So we have Banter. Do we have a Banter? Oh, we do. Ona's in Banter. Blue Bloods. Ona's sister over there in the crowd, she's in Blue Bloods. Catabao. Do we have Catabao here tonight? Oh, Catabao missed out. Okay. Campiero. Got a couple Campiero folks here. Dorset. The Jackson siblings, myself included. I'm in Dorset. And then Victorian. Ethan's in Victorian. And Ethan, can you remember what's special about Victorian that we just learned this morning? Do you remember?
We won the house point champion.
You did. So Victorian was our house point champion of February. So every month we try and see which house gets the most house points for that month. and then we have some sort of fun prize or incentive at the next house meeting. So congrats to Ethan and Victorian on that one. So our students, all throughout the day, they earn house points for the amazing things that they do and for meeting our Best at West expectations. So I'll show you an example of the scoreboard that we have throughout our day that teachers have in their classrooms or we have up in the main hallway. And it's a great way for the kids to connect, see where each other's at, to see their face on the leaderboard, or a little video that we can even connect to the scoreboard, which is really cool for them to see. And I put in quotations here, the One School at a Time grant. So earlier in the school year, we applied for the One School at a Time grant through Wood TV8 and Family Fair, and we were fortunate enough to win $1,000 to be put towards our house system and to fund the online program that we use to keep track of our points and all those really cool things. So on top of just kids getting points, which is really cool, right? We love getting house points. What we really love about our house program is the fact that we can get together as a building in what we call our house meetings twice a month. This is typically how we do it for about 30 minutes. And we focus on the things that you see there, connecting with our kids, connecting with our staff members, new connections, not just within our grade levels, character building lessons, and doing good things within the community. So we've done placemats for veterans, we've done Valentine's Day cards for our assisted living homes around the area, and it's something that everyone in our building is really proud of. So here's an example of our school leaderboard. So I think this was from a few weeks ago. Is Catawba still in first? They are? Okay. I don't know if any of the other places have. It's been a tight race this year. It's been very tight, back and forth. What happens, give me an example, when a new house takes first place? Isaiah, what happens?
When the new house takes first place, sometimes we have these banners and we could change, if Adam was in first place, we have orange banners all around the school.
Yep, we've done that before.
If Blue Bloods takes first place, if someday we decide we're going to change the banners.
Yep.
And change them to blue.
Yeah, we've done that before where we hang all the first place banners throughout the school. What happens on the computer? Like if Blue Bloods takes first, Ainsley, what happens? Whole school gets really excited.
The color will go up to the middle and the background will turn into the color.
The color changes, and what comes on the screen? Breathes fire. Deegan? The dragon. The dragon comes on and breathes fire and announces that new first place house. So really cool things built into that as well for our kids. So the big question this year was, we have K4 coming up next year, but we're always trying to become 1% better. We're always trying to look at our systems in place and think about how can we improve it. And the way that we thought about that, the question that we asked was, how do we make improvements to our system to more actively involve our kids and just strengthen the overall goals of the system? So back to those things of community service, of connections across our building, of just those good people things that we wish for our kids. And so what we came up with this year as a staff, which we're very proud of, is our Top Dog Initiative. And so our students here are examples of our top dogs, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then our monthly mission, which is something new, but something that we're, again, very excited about and continuing to push those things. So the things we're looking to achieve, to recognize and celebrate those kids that go even above and beyond those Best at West expectations with specific character traits. So these traits are just examples of what is already tied into our house system. So integrity, perseverance, that's this month's house trait. Inquisitive, empathy, so we're not even talking about words like happy and nice and smart. I mean, we're really digging deep into some of these tier 2 vocab words, right? But those are the things that we truly wish for all of our kids. And our kids step up to the plate and they understand that and they really engage with those things. And so to that second point, it's helping us all get a better understanding of what those great traits are. And so our top dog system is acknowledging those kids each month for going above and beyond with those house traits. So teachers will identify who those kids are, and we make decisions each month, and we celebrate those kids at our house meetings. So we make a big deal. We have certificates that we give out. We have a bulletin board that we'll post those kids' pictures on. So really fun thing that we've done. And then on top of that, in thinking about how we can better teach to those skills every month, we've incorporated our monthly mission video. So our top dogs from the current month get to help make next month's video and demonstrate to what that trait looks like every day. So here's an example of our bulletin board. So we have on the left our top dogs for being creative. I know McKinley, that was you, right, girl? Okay. Anybody else on here for creative? Ona was on for creative. Very nice. And then in November we had inquisitive. Deegan, was that you? Yeah. That was you. That's right. I remember that for November. And so we've had, since September on, we've had a different trait for each month. And again, perseverance is what we're working on for March.
That's important.
And then here's an example of our monthly mission video. This was our video for February, which focused on our house trait of empathy. Hey West Elementary, Mr. Wonder Jim here, excited to present to you our monthly mission video for February. So last week at our house meeting, we talked about our house trait of the month, empathy. And empathy, if you remember, is to understand how others feel because you have felt that same way before. So here we have a few of our top dogs from January that are going to show you a few examples of what it means to show empathy.
We can all show empathy
when other people are happy. Uno. I win! I win! Yay! Yay! We can show empathy by understanding others' feelings.
Oh no, I dropped my snack.
Here, you can have my snack. I know what it feels like to drop a snack. We can show empathy even if others don't tell us how they're feeling.
Oh man, I got an F- on my test.
Oh. It's okay, Jordan. I used to get F's all the time on my tests. I feel the same way. But then I started taking a tutoring class and getting better.
I'm sorry you got an F- on your test. I really hope you can get a good grade on the next one, maybe next time.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome.
All right, Wes, so now that you've seen some examples of what it means to show empathy, we will be looking for our top dogs for February, for those that go above and beyond each day with showing empathy here at our building. Yeah. So that essentially is everything that we have this year and for what we're trying to do to, again, make our house system that 1% better. So I'm going to throw it over to our students now. So I have a few questions that I want you to maybe think about answering. Just maybe pick one. What's your favorite thing about our house system? What was the trait that you were a top dog for? And what does that trait mean to you? Or what's something that you got a house point for recently? Anybody want to go first? Ainsley, you look ready. Come on over. You want to speak into the mic? Everybody can hear you? There you go.
I got to be a top dog because I was a
Which one, Mom? Encouraging. So you're a top dog for being encouraging, really rooting on and supporting your friends, your teachers?
Yes.
Wonderful. Nice job, Ainsley. What else? Anything else?
My favorite thing about our house meetings is that I get to make new friends there.
We do. We get to meet friends, just not even in first grade for you, right? But for across our building. I love that. Thanks, hon. Who else has got something? McKinley, you're up next. Come on. What do you got?
I was one of the top dogs for most creative, and my favorite thing about the house system is that we get to make fun crafts for like our family members and stuff, and anything that the house meeting is related to.
Wonderful. Thanks, girl. Deegan, you look like you had something. You ready?
So what I like about the house system is that I get to be with people that I'm not usually with all the time at the house systems.
It's important. It really is.
I was top dog for integrity, doing the right thing when no one's watching, And my favorite thing about the house system is getting to do crafts with kids you don't usually know or do stuff with.
And our older kids, especially like Ethan, like Lee, and like Ona, they do a really nice job with our younger students in those house meetings as well. Ona, Isaiah, what do you got? Any ideas? Please share.
My favorite thing about the house meeting is that we get paired with a buddy and do fun crafts with them.
Yeah. Last but not least, come on.
Bring that down.
There you go.
My favorite thing, I got a house point. I was top dog for integrity, which means doing something when nobody's watching. And one of my favorite things about the house points is probably like you get house buddies. You get to watch these fun videos.
Do lots of fun things in our houses. Nice job, everybody. Yes, give them a round of applause. Well done, guys. Really nice job. So, thank you very much. And are there any questions from our board for our students?
Is Wes still the best?
What do you think? Is Wes? I'd say so. I'd say so.
All right.
Wes is best. That's right.
I
We
have a
love it.
question.
Yeah.
So I know that in some schools where they have house systems, every house has like a cheer or a chant. Do you guys have that? Yeah.
A chant.
Super fun. I don't suppose anybody wants to tell me theirs, do they? The fight song, I think that's what I'm thinking of, right? Like each one of yours has a special cheer that you do together, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do I do one?
Can you do one for me? You don't have to on the spot. You don't. You absolutely don't have to, but.
The thing is, for house camping, we really don't. We're trying to have it as a house chant.
Yeah.
So basically, we don't have a house chant because these our house teachers are waiting for someone to find a good house chant.
Oh, so you're coming up with them this year? That's so cool. That's even better.
What does Camp Bureau do for your house sign? Like if you see someone else at in Camp Bureau out west, what do you guys like to do?
Oh,
That's awesome. I love
Every
it.
house seems to have their own, right?
That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
So are the houses based on grades? So, or do you have all different grades within a house?
All different grades.
Okay.
All different grades.
Okay.
So for our kindergarten classes, and then for any new student, we actually have a new student starting tomorrow. So we'll go into their class sometime this week, and we have the sorting hat, envision like Harry Potter, with each of our 6 colored wristbands in the hat. And we shake it up, kids give a drum roll, and that's where they go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Can't switch.
Can't
Nope,
switch.
Can't switch.
Okay.
From kindergarten or when you come to us. But it seemed to work out pretty well. Our houses are really close. I think even first place to 6th place right now is within 100 points.
Oh, wow.
And at West, if you know how, that's nothing.
So are you in the same house through your entire career at West? You'll always be that top dog.
That house until we leave.
Okay. Well, that's
That's
really
pretty cool.
building some trust and all those good things about your house. Nice.
Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good job.
Thank you again.
He does a good
Thank
job.
you.
She's trying to sneak her way in there.
You'd be perfect there.
Thanks,
He's
everyone.
got the best name.
Thanks, parents, for bringing them in.
Thank you.
Any around the south.
Parents, if you'd like to stick around, you can, but you're free to leave right now if you'd like to also.
Yeah. We understand. It could all be done. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thanks, Wes. Love it.
Amy, do you know your house?
I can't
Sign?
remember because she was
It's
trying
a
to
bit
teach.
neat.
Mine is, I can't remember.
That's so cute.
I just had the cutest aide to help me. She was awesome. I almost wore my shirt tonight.
Y'all want to?
Yeah.
Well, charisma.
you want me to?
Oh, sure, I can take
So
it.
the next item is a board policy provider consideration through a law firm.
Sure. So, been communicating with you guys for some time about board policy providers. You know, we currently have Neola. We've had Neola for some time. As time has gone on, there have been some things that, and I'll say mainly John and I, but I know Heather and Scott have as well, noticed regarding some things that happen when you have somebody who represents multiple states. And again, I am not saying Neola is a bad board policy provider, but I think there are some options now that are more state specific. And we run into situations where if we have legal questions, we will contact True Law Firm as an example, and they have to look through our policy, interpret our policy, and many times and then get back to us. And that, you know, is as I mentioned, I think one consideration that I want you to look at. Another one is that, as I mentioned, Neola, they are a board policy company for the Midwest, for several states in the Midwest. And so sometimes the board policies or the board policy considerations that they provide for us don't really have that Michigan flavor as much as sometimes we would like for them to. And so we spend time trying to really look through things. There are times where we'll call, whether it's True Law Firm or Miller Johnson, our two main legal firms, and we'll talk about something. And a lot of times terminology is very important. And, you know, the reason why we've considered looking at those and brought them up to you is because I think in this day and age where it's very important for your legal teams to know your policy, it makes more sense, in our opinion, to have board policy that is written or considered, you know, written for our consideration by the people who are interpreting that from a legal sense or representing us from a legal sense. So that's why we wanted to open up a discussion with you. We don't have action tonight on it, but we wanted to open it up. And we believe True Law Firm, there are many districts that have been switching from Neola and going to their law firm or a law firm that aligns with their legal team, and for the reasons that I mentioned. So we wanted to open up that discussion with you. I do think it's time to seriously consider this, because I do think, you know, not only is there a time and therefore money factor for you know, our legal firm when we call them to say, well, let me look at your board policy and I'll get back to you. You know, we're on the clock when they do that. And, you know, that costs time. It's time and therefore costs money. But also, if you have somebody who has gone through policy with you, they've written policy, and then they work with you to have the policies you know, aligned the way we need them here in Grandville, then when you call them, they already know what your policy is. They've been through that.
So we've used Neola for a long time.
Long time,
And
yes.
I think some of that is because there weren't others that were doing this kind of review of policy and all. And you say now this third.
True Law Firm?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
HSN.
True. Does it now? Like they have the skill, they have built this ability
Yes.
to review or policies applied in Michigan.
Yes, they have, they know Michigan law, they know, they're experts in school law. Therefore, you know, and they have created their own board policies. There are districts around that have adopted. As I mentioned, there are others that if they haven't adopted Troon's policies, they've adopted whoever their legal team is, their policies
necessarily
and
Neola?
school law. Not necessarily Neola. There still are plenty that are with Neola. But the more I talk with superintendents in our state, the more I hear that pop up of, we really need to consider that, because there are some factors that play in nowadays that didn't
Right, we didn't have even
didn't
a
have that
choice.
option in the past.
So I think that terminology piece that you mentioned becomes pretty critical when
Yeah.
we're talking about law,
Yeah.
that we're talking the same.
Right.
thing.
John's going to talk to you a little bit about the process that we would go through if we were to consider looking at Troon Law Firm.
Yeah, and a couple other things that we get from the two attorneys we use most often are Miller, Johnson, and Troon, and what we typically get from them, sometimes weekly, at least more than monthly, are law notes very specifically on Michigan law from them, and they always reference their specific policy. So when I look at the law notes, I read through it, and I go into our board docs, and I hunt for the language that we have and see how it compares to what their language was. So it's one of those things where the people that we're talking to all the time are giving us some of those instances, like here's something for you to consider, but we have to consider it a couple of different ways. The other thing that Troon has that is really nice is they have model student handbooks that follow their policy. And so the student handbook that we have, we've created and we've tailored it to the Neola policies, but with every update that we get from a policy standpoint, we'd also be able to update those school handbooks or student handbooks as we do those going forward. So in terms of the process, if we move forward with Troon, or they would give us their model policy. I'd set it side by each with our current policy, and I would go through and evaluate and look at what are the things that we have selected from a Neola standpoint, what are the things that are options for us from a Troon standpoint. We would have to go through really policy by policy and look at each one of those. Fortunately for our district, we don't have, like Forest Hills went through this process, and because they have Goodwillie, they had some very specific policy that was related to their Goodwillie school, and so they had to do a few things a little different. Thankfully, we don't have policy that lines up like that, because it makes it a little easier, but it'll probably take anywhere from 3 to 4 months of focused time to really go through all of those and get to a point where we feel like what we had here and what we have here align to the best of our ability. Obviously, I'll spend a lot of time talking about that with Roger, talking a lot about that with our attorney, to ensure that, if I'm looking at this and thinking, all right, this is what we had and this is what's here, talk to me about why this is written this way and why this was written this way, just so that we can get a better understanding as we start to move forward with those policies. And once we get through that process, obviously then it would need to come to you. So, and I asked Katie Broadus to come. She is the attorney that I talk to most frequently from Troon. She's the one that I've talked to most frequently about shifting over. So if there are bits and pieces on the expertise related to the Troon policy, she'd be able to help us answer some of those as well as we're thinking about it.
So you mentioned Miller Johnson and Troon. They do similar stuff, right?
Yes. From a legal, I mean, they're both our legal teams that we have.
Is Troon a more specialty? Is that why you're heading that direction?
I've seen the Troon policies. I've seen the Miller-Johnson policies. I think Troon has more options. I think with students with disabilities, there is a component that I think is solid. And I think the terminology, I think the process that's there is awesome.
You definitely favor them, though.
I would favor Troon, yes.
Yep.
How many schools does Troon represent that way right now?
I know for sure Forest Hills, yeah.
Hi, I was
Sis-
my name's Katie Broadus. I live in Grand Rapids, so I volunteered to come to the meeting today if you had any questions for me. The question was, how many schools do we have right now? On retainer, we represent over 500 school districts in the state of Michigan, ISDs, school districts, and public school academies. For the policy service, we have 133 school districts that have signed up for the policy service. It's about 25% of the school districts in the state. And I don't know the exact number, but we have about 36% of the ISDs. So that would include Kent ISD, Jenison just signed up. I'm just thinking of ones in your area, Wyoming, Forest Hills. Forest Hills actually, if you don't mind, just a quick plug. When we started the policy service in 2019, we thought of, we wanted to draft them, but we know we're attorneys. I mean, we work with school districts. That's all I do all day long. But I wanted to get a boots on the ground approach to, read these and tell me where we're missing something. There's got to be gaps in here. We're just attorneys. We're not principals and superintendents. So we partnered with Forest Hills at the beginning, back in 2019, 2020, when COVID was hitting, and we asked them to be a pilot district for us. So we had Forest Hills as a pilot school district and the Calhoun ISD as a pilot ISD. And so they went through Christina Neese, and she handed that out to a lot of her colleagues. Special ed reviewed the student section, principals reviewed, finance reviewed the finance section, and we sat down in meetings with them for hours and hours and just said, okay, give us the good, bad, and ugly about what we put down on paper, and we worked to redo the policies according to a school district review. So I think that's a unique approach. I don't know of any other law firm or entity that's used school districts as kind of their pilot project to test the waters before we put it out fully in 2020, in the middle of COVID.
All right.
Are there standards, so by now, since you have that many districts, do you already have standard boilerplate language that we can plug into? Or let's say there's 5 versions on policy 5642, and then we can pick those options within that?
So there's never, I think you're kind of used to the Neola approach where they have 5 FMLA policies and you kind of have to put them in the right spot. We don't do that. We didn't organize it that way. We tried to slim down your traditional 9 policy sections, slim that down to 5 policy sections, 5 series of policies. And then within those policies, now there's embedded options. There's never going to be 5 options. We're really going to tell you what we think, is a fill in the blank. You can fill it in in terms of who your Title IX coordinator is. There's other substantive fill in the blanks, but we're really boiling it down to what we think is the best practice for that option. And if there's any questions, we hold a Zoom meeting every other month with our policy subscribers, and we go through the options that are kind of onboarding the service. We go through the options and we talk about the different options throughout, so you understand why we made that optional language, what the options mean, and then school districts can pick from there what options they want to go with.
What's the typical timeline and expense to convert?
The expense is going to be to purchase the policy manual. So the purchase would be to the policy manual, then there's administrative guidelines and forms that most districts purchase as well. We have a lot of value-added forms, complaint forms, internal forms that you use to implement the policies in the administrative guidelines and forms, and then there's handbooks on top of that, John mentioned with there's an employee handbook, and then there's a student handbook. I don't have the actual order form in front of me, but there's the cost is an upfront cost to purchase those different items. And then once you onboard, there's no additional cost. The Zoom meetings are at no charge. If you have a question, call, and we don't charge for short questions that are asked of the policy service. We've had people that say, this policy does not work for us, we do this differently, and then we've had to go into the policy and completely redraft the policy. That would be an additional cost if we're redrafting and significantly modifying a policy. But 90% of the districts that have onboarded have not had to modify any of the policies.
If you were to compare, since you went down the path of student, handbooks. Have you streamlined those as well to increase, I'm going to say retention, even though I think that's very rare in a student's perspective, right? They sign it because they have to, even though they've been told what's in it. But I think the key thing when we run into issues of discipline is there's probably a student that's saying, no, I never knew that.
Yeah, and that's what the handbook is supposed to do, right? So
Yep.
the handbook is supposed to be the policies put into practice. And when you don't have a good handbook that provides that and provides that notice, then I think you run the risk of having liability if you did discipline a student and they didn't have notice of what their procedures are or substantively of what the conduct is that was problematic, was misconduct. Then that's where we see challenges to disciplinary decisions with students, is where that due process is not provided. So that's what we tried to do with the policies and the handbook, is streamline those two things. So there's a direct line from your policies directly to your handbook, that if somebody signs off on the handbook, they have notice of what's in the handbook, and then we're following that handbook in any disciplinary decisions. And all the handbook cross-references back to the policy, so it should be one and the same.
Right. So based on your experience, do you then, part of your Zoom call or beginning of school process, do you adjust and or advise districts on what areas to emphasize when they're going over the handbooks?
Yeah, because we're really going over the areas that the policy manual has highlighted language, and we go over the areas that, you know, what we call it requires an action item. We need you to take some sort of action. We need to emphasize this language because there's certain areas that say, you know, select an option, but consult with legal counsel first. So that's the kind of the consultation that we have. This is this issue. That issue I know is a speech issue. These are the considerations that you should have when you're choosing which option to select, or we need to emphasize that this language exists, and please make sure that you're paying attention to it and make sure your board knows this is what we've selected for this language. So yes, that's what all those meetings are designed to do.
So I'm gonna move off to the side a little bit. So when it comes to language within a policy, have you, I don't know, do you have special sauce so that the average person can understand a policy with, I guess, more simple or common language versus legal ease within them?
Yeah, that was the whole goal of drafting the policies, because when we've always drafted policies. Issues would come up, we would draft policies because our clients would say, hey, why can't Sherwin draft a policy on this? And we would. Every time we draft a policy, our goal is it's got to be readable. It's got to be where someone in the public is going to see this and they need to understand what their rights are, how the procedure is going to go, you know, what decision the board is going to make or the superintendent is going to make or the principal is going to make. So that's always been a goal, I think, in any writing that we ever put out, but even more so emphasized with the policies, because we did not want legalese. We did not want long, complex procedures or long, complex, you know, even sentence structures within the policy, because it just makes it unreadable. So what we did was we tried to take Neola's policy, which I think is very verbose, lots of language, page after page of policies. We tried to say only in very narrow situations are we going to have a 4, 5, 6 page policy. I think you'll see that in FMLA. I think you'll see that in Title IX. But other than that, I'm trying to think of what maybe discipline. There's a series of discipline policies. I'm trying to think what other policies would be that verbose, and we don't want to make have that much language unless we absolutely have to. So we tried to really narrow it and make it more concise. That's how we took 9 series of Neola's series, and we pushed it down to 5. And I do labor and employment law, and with labor and employment, you had a professional staff, you had a certified staff, and you had administration. And we took that all and made that into the 4000 series, which addresses all employees with regards to legal rights and then standards and conduct, and then talks about your specific categories of employees, like your non-exempt staff, your hourly staff, your teachers, non-teaching professionals, your administrators, like your principals, your supervisors, your directors, and then the superintendent. So try to make it more concise, but then recognizing that you have different groups of employees in the district that need to be addressed in policy.
What's the standard amount of time or guesstimate to convert over?
Yeah, I like to answer this question in a perfect world. If I was the superintendent, I would want to do it in 3 to 4 months, because month 1 is where you get the policies, you start to pick the people within your organization who's going to start with the review process. You month 1 or 2, you attend the Zoom meetings that we do for onboarding, and you start to really go into the policy set, and we have a checklist of all the things you need to look at before you finalize the policy set. So you really go into the policy set to look at options, figure out how you finalize the policy set, and then you can bring that to the board and start the review process with the board. But I think it really has to start at the administration to make sure that the policies reflect what your current practices are.
Did you ever have any districts that went with Troon and then went away from them afterwards, or have everybody that's come has stayed?
I'll be honest with you, there's been a couple that have signed on and they've said, we just don't have the time for this right now. Can we basically trade it back in and then we'll onboard at another time? And we've accommodated some of those requests. We have some districts that use it kind of as a library of policies, which is not the way it's intended to be used, but to say, oh, hey, we need a policy on this, let's pull it from Troon, and then they put it in their current, which I think is not a good idea, because our policies cross-reference each other, and it may be inconsistent with another policy that they already have in their policy set. So some districts have used it in other ways, but our whole goal in this was, once you purchase them, they're your policies. If you don't like our policies, you can change them, you can modify them. Just know that we're running updates annually and periodically off of our policies. So just, as long as you're happy with the way that they reflect your practices, we'll help you in any way we can, but they're your policies in the end.
If memory serves me correctly, when we began with Neola, now that she mentioned that, they were used as a repository library for Ron at the time, and then it got too hard, and we just switched.
I'm assuming there's going to be a uptick in cost for the district to do this. Is that correct? Or do you think it's about the same?
I think it's about the same, yeah.
Okay.
I don't really
I didn't know
think
if it'd be
it's-
more expensive, at least to start, because doing all this.
There may be upfront to purchase,
Okay.
but the cost is very similar.
Okay.
Yeah, we run our update. We know how much Neola charges for their updates, and we do an annual update, and we run it pretty much the
We're
same.
paying for a policy service either way.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about the handbooks.
Sure.
We have a couple different schools. Do you create them for, like, we're going to have 5th, 6th grade? You would make a handbook for that school? Is that how that works?
It's a model handbook, so then you guys would take the handbook, and if there's specific school-related issues, and we kind of have found where you say, like, fill in this school's mission statement, or fill in this school's, maybe field trip policy, or if it's different than what we do, or you have a building practice. So, we can't do it for every, 130 school district that has it, but we try to just put the skeletal approach in, align it with your board policies, and then you can plug it in and work with it in your buildings.
One of the things that I'm wondering too is with Neola, if we have 500 schools in Michigan that you work with, and we have 133 districts, and we have 36% of our ISDs, Neola's must be huge.
Yeah,
right? Like, we're talking about, like, so many people. I feel like at least having it local would be a little bit more, we can acquire more knowledge through you quickly, correct?
I'd like to think so, yes. I think that's the way that it's worked out with a lot of districts. Just as an example, there's changes in the law all the time in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
We've had just this last summer a huge change in employment law. And we are able to, because we're monitoring that anyways, when we're monitoring that, we say, okay, what does this mean for our clients? Let's get a school law notes article out. Let's get a e-blast article out. But then the next question is, what does this mean for policy? And so we're already thinking through what type of updates do we need to put out? Do we need to put the updates? I mean, we're recognizing your time. Do we need to put the updates out this month? Is this like hair on fire type of an update? Or can we wait till July, which is when our annual updates come out, and update it at that point in time? So we're trying to be understanding of your time and making sure that we're not creating more work for districts. And our updates, too, I mean, since our policies are more concise, you're never going to get a stack of updates that look like this. And this is one of the most common complaints that I've heard of the Neola updates. I've never actually seen them myself, but that it's so much to go through. I mean, we're working hard, we're putting in the hours to update it, but we just don't have 100 policies that we're going to hand you and say these need to be updated. We're going to hand you maybe 30 or something around that and give you the explanations of why we updated it, but it's not going to be, I think, is the large lift that the Neola updates have been.
Okay.
Well, and you need to understand the board is intimately tied to this process because that's one of our main functions is to do that. So we would sign off on policies.
Is there any benefit to having diversity in interpretation?
Yes, I mean, I definitely think so. I think, though, when you're looking at putting, because a lot of your policies are just a reflection of the law. It's not complicated. Sometimes it's just what does the law say, and then the district's going to do what the law says. So I think when you have people that are doing that area of law day in and day out, they're going to catch things that maybe an out-of-state company is not going to catch. Here's a perfect example. Michigan passed the Paid Medical Leave Act, which means that your hourly staff get at least 40 hours of paid leave for sickness and to care for family members and things like that. That leave is paid. Well, we saw the Neola policy that came through on the Paid Medical Leave Act, and it didn't just apply that 40 hours to your non-exempt staff, it applied it to all your employees. So that was an oversight that I think most people wouldn't have caught, but knowing that that was such a limitation of the statute, that it was only supposed to apply to hourly staff, your superintendent was, going to get 40 more hours of paid leave time. That's significant for an organization like this because that's going to be very expensive if you're now granting more leave time than you previously had. So, I mean, that's just an example of there's, times when we've seen the Neola policies and we thought, this isn't really what the law is saying or intended to do. And we work through districts to try to work with, I mean, that's how when we started this. We had so many districts saying, review this policy for us, and we thought there's a better way to do this. We don't have to review every policy. We can just put out a manual and say, don't adopt this policy, adopt this policy. So I think that's been more effective and a better resource of everybody's time.
Thank you for the answer.
Do you do some type of training for staff that comes in, or when there's policy change, you just send it?
We send the update, and then if anybody needs explanation, we work with either the administration or we work with the board president or someone who can, if we need some explanation on why we made the update. We haven't gotten into training. It's an area that I've kind of thought about, but we just haven't really been able to have that. I mean, every year we've added to the policy service, so it's become, it was just policies, then it was administrative guidelines and forms, and now it's handbooks. So it's growing a lot, but training would be another road to go down if we wanted to.
Joe, what happens when we get those updates? We work with our administrative team to go over what the changes are, have discussion, and so on, and make sure people have, they understand what the changes are and what they need. If we have interpretations, we call Katie and say, hey, can you help interpret this for us? What happened with the law, or what happened that changed this? And she gives us the true Michigan flavor, which now would, she knows exactly what the policy is, so it's much easier conversation, because if we called her on that, she may have to say, well, let me take a look at what Neola has, and then I'll get back to you.
It makes sense. I was just thinking in the criminal law sense, it was nice to see the case law that made the changes, and to put that in real terms was easier to comprehend as an administrator. So
as a just trying to get a level of understanding here. When it comes to Neola, and they're across the Midwest, you, as a subscriber, as a district prescriber, we did not have the ability to contact them, speak with a lawyer who understands Michigan law to guide you?
You could talk to somebody about the laws that they use to write that policy, and I gotta believe there's some Michigan law tied in there. But when you're looking at several states, you're looking at several states. When you're Troon, as an example, you're looking at Michigan law. I mean, if there's something, I'll give you an example. Para just happened. The employment law has changed.
Right.
And we had some districts in the area that were going to go into February, negotiate, and not have any updated policies. And right around December, they said, hey, we don't have anything on this yet, and we're going to be, we know when February hits, for some of them, their association, their unions were going to want to start negotiating based on some of those changes, and they didn't have anything, and so really had to time it, many times say, hey, we need something. We can't be, whereas if we had someone who is already looking at those areas and notices when those changes happen right away, I mean, from a legal sense, our attorneys are already looking at that here in Michigan and saying, okay, like Katie said, what does this mean legally and what does it mean for policy? So I think it's more urgent, more localized, more customized than having somebody that's looking at the big picture in the Midwest.
All right, you sort of answered my question, but I
Okay.
got to go deeper now. So, as a subscriber to Neola, we do not have hotline support talking to attorneys that understand and specialize in Michigan law.
If we had a question on something with Neola, I'm not sure which attorney I would call. I hope that answers your question. I would call Katie to interpret it, our legal to interpret it. So if they have attorneys to interpret it, I don't know as a superintendent who that is. They might say, well, we have this person you could talk to.
They just don't have connection to our district.
Yeah.
But we don't have, so I think you've answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a named account management team that works with us that you can call Jake Miller, and if Jake Miller's not around, Sandy Johnson is. You don't have that.
I can call them. They have a team, but I don't know from a legal sense that they have that expertise, the legal expertise.
That's what I was looking
Yeah.
for.
And they might, but I don't know who it is, and why wouldn't I know after 9 years of being a superintendent?
Yeah.
That's part of the.
I just don't understand why they don't provide that, because
Yeah.
they gotta have a CRM system. I mean,
You have,
even if it's an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you communicate to hold on to that relationship?
Yeah.
I'm not,
right.
what I'm trying to do is understand a dysfunctional account management system where you just take what they give you and then you have to find your own resource to understand its content.
I think from a legal sense, yes. Yeah. I could talk to a person, they have a representative that reviews policies with us, but that person's not an attorney.
Well, it's easy to be comfortable with the system when that's what you've always had, and that's been our only option, but now it's not our only option.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
That's
so
important.
now we
As a
have, it
board-
sounds like we have an option that will serve us better. I know you understand, I'm just saying out loud, like,
Yeah.
now we have an option that's a better service to us that has direct we're already paying the service to have it interpreted.
It is an upgrade.
It actually is a better savings in the end, even if
Yeah,
it
'cause
costs
it's
a
a double
little bit
hit.
for us to
Right.
Yeah.
put in the man hours to make the policy updates.
We end up spending taxpayer dollars to get our policies interpreted. When Roger was talking about para, when we were saying, hey, we need something from Neola in case we're asked to bargain, I already had a true law update that had, hey, if you're a retainer client and you purchase policies, here are all the policies that you can grab, and here are the forms, and here are these things, because, like Katie said, they were looking at the laws as they were coming forward and pre-planning for those. It's just, they've got the boots on the ground here in Michigan to help us, and we end up periodically spending extra taxpayer dollars to get what they have, or to ask them to help us to understand what we have as that happens. So initially, yeah, Joe, there's going to be some of that increased cost, but long-term, I think we're going to see the cost decrease, because like when I call Katie, I give her, here's the policy that I think it fits under, and she looks at all of our policies and she calls back and says, well, I think it's this one and this one and this administrative guideline, but we're paying her to look at our policies to determine how it fits within the situation that we're dealing with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
John, will this also make your job to go, oh, this is the policy, especially since we're taking this giant thing from Neola and squishing it down to the 5, right? So we're kind of cutting out some of that repetitive language, and that will make your job easier?
Yeah, for sure it would,
Yeah.
and I think long-term it would, especially if we determine we're going to do the administrative guidelines and forms as well. If you look at our forms documents, many of them haven't been updated since 2004, 2005, and that's because they probably didn't need to, but they look like they were created in 2004, 2005. And so there are some things that, like I receive those and I'll often edit them so they look a little more recent, but I'm editing them as opposed to getting those updated. And that's not something that, unless there's a significant law change, it's not something that Neola would necessarily need to do for us. So there's some ancillary benefit to that as well.
So part of the process, again, so we would have a team, we would sit down, we would go through insurance policies, look at our operations of things, still make recommendations to you, you would approve that, and then once our policies are approved, the administrative guidelines, that piece we would sit down with our administrators and go through those, and so that they have a thorough understanding of the administrative guidelines that align with your policies.
So, one more question. When you have, over the last 2+ years, given us a summary of the policies, did those summaries come from Thrun?
No, those came from some pieces that Neola will provide you with some summaries, and I would take some of the legal pieces and make a summary for you. So part of it was Neola's,
okay,
this is based on this change in the law, or this, I would use that and make sure it was, there were some pieces in there that you understood the why.
Okay.
Seems like a good idea, so you'll bring it back to our next.
What we do, so you have a couple weeks. If you have any questions, please reach out to either John or myself, and if we don't know the answer, we're gonna call Katie on how they do that piece. But we want to give you some time to think about what you've heard, and if you have any other questions after that we can get those answered. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move into public comment. Is there any? No public comment tonight?
They would have handed you slips.
Sometimes he does not.
Oh, they're stingy, huh? I don't think.
All right. The next regular board meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Monday, March 18, 2024 at 7 PM at the Administration Building. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good job, Brad.
Hey, I made it.